Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 26 of Social Scoop Podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. I feel like we've just had so many new faces over in this podcast community, and I'm so excited that you're loving it because it's literally my favorite part of my week when I get to sit down and record this episode for you. So, before we dive into today's news, I wanted to ask you if you are in our Facebook community yet. So, we have this really awesome private social mate Facebook community where literally just last week we had over 30 creators share their rates. We had video tutorials for connecting with brands. We had shared contact email lists for our dream brands that so many people were working on. It was amazing to see. And honestly, I have so much planned just based on the amazing response we've gotten in the last couple of weeks. So if you're not in the group yet and you have a Facebook, get in this group. I promise there's so much value. It's honestly been so cool to see. So that link is right in the description. We have so much Instagram news this week. It feels like they're really cleaning house and like trying to, from what I've heard, simplify the app. But it's interesting because I feel like in order to get to a place where the app is more simplified, they had to change so many things. And so for us, it feels really chaotic and kind of the opposite of simplified. But who knows what it'll look like when it's, quote, done, if it's ever done. First of all, though, Instagram will now be ranking content by originality. So, our lovely friend, head of Instagram, Adam Masseri, hopped on a video. As soon as I see his face every time on my feed, you guys, I panic. Like, he gives me anxiety, and I know I'm not alone. I'm going to read you something that he said, though. He said, "Creators are so important to the future of Instagram, and we want to make sure that they are successful and get all the credit they deserve," which I appreciate. I think this is great. Essentially, what this will look like, you will be able to tag the creator, the original creator of a concept if you've recreated it, which I think is really cool. Give credit where credit is due, right? Also, if you are even not tagging anyone in the video, they're going to be doing some analyzing of all of our posts, no matter if someone is tagged in it or not, to see how original the content is. So again, I'm going to give you a quote from him. "We look at things like who's in the video and if we've seen the video before." Not exactly sure how that's going to work, but I'm also not a technology master. So we'll have to just see. We'll trust and see that that is going to work in our favor. One thing that I did read that I think is important to mention, if you're someone who's reposting a lot of stuff from other accounts, like if you have an account solely based on reposting other things, that is something that you may actually see your reach decline, because obviously if they're ranking by originality and it's not original content you created, obviously that's going to affect things. My other thought here is if you are someone who maybe like does the kind of like stitch thing with a video, will that affect it? That's something I'm not sure the answer to, but I would be really curious to see how that gets ranked, considering it's a feature of Instagram Reels that they're kind of pushing to us, but also it's not technically fully original content. So not exactly sure about that, but we'll cross our fingers and hope for the best. Instagram also launched a test for the, quote, use as template option for Reels. I freaking love this feature. How many times have you listened to this podcast and heard me say that I love something Instagram is coming out with? Love. Like, not often. So this is really good. So essentially, this is out for a small amount of creators. They didn't specify who's getting it, how they're getting it, or when anyone else is getting it. But you will basically be able to click that ... right in the corner of someone's reel, and you can use as template. So this will be a button that you'll be able to see if you're part of this small group of creators. If you are not, you won't see it, but hopefully eventually you will. Then it's going to prompt you to basically choose your own photos or videos, and Instagram essentially is going to put together the video for you based on the timestamps of each clip in this other reel that you're using as a template. So for example, those reels where the video clips like exactly match up with the time and you're like in shot trying to get it exact and it's so annoying, let someone else do it once, and then hopefully we'll just be able to hit use as template, which will be great. However, this kind of goes along with the last piece of news with originality. Are we going to be docked on this because we're using the template of someone else who was the original creator? I don't know. But that was kind of the first thing I thought about because I read these two pieces of news right next to each other and I was like, wait, hold on. Interesting, but again, we'll have to see. Instagram also officially launched the live test for pinned posts on your user profiles. This is something we chatted about maybe a few months back in a previous episode, but this feature eventually is going to go live for everyone as far as it seems. They have done this live test again with a small group of creators. If you are selected for this test, you'll be able to go to a post of yours, and you hit again that ... and then you'll be able to hit pin to your profile for the post to be pinned at the top of your feed, your profile. So think about TikTok does the exact same thing, right? We can pin 3 posts right to the top. As far as what I've noticed from Instagram, 3 is still kind of that magic number. Any examples I've seen have only been 3. So that's what I understand as of right now. But one thing that I think is really cool about this is that if it comes to life and we as creators are able to utilize this for our businesses, this is actually a really great add-on for a brand collaboration that you might be working on. So maybe you offer 1 or 2 of those pin spots per month. You don't necessarily want all 3 of them, but 2, maybe 1 of them to be kind of like ad placement for a brand. So if you do an ad with a brand, you could say, maybe I'll charge you an extra $500 for this ad to live in my pinned post for the next 30 days. So that's going to be the most recent post right at the top of your page, a brand ad. And obviously for a brand, if you're someone who posts a lot, it's going to be easy for that brand to the post to make its way down further and further. But if they're paying for that ad space to be directly at the top of your profile, that's really awesome. That is a great way to up your ticket price as a creator. So again, I probably wouldn't offer this to 3 different brands. I might do 2 and have like a post in the middle or something. And also, like if your audience is going to that post first when they come to your profile, you don't necessarily want them to be looking at 3 ads in a row. Some people feel weird about ads still for whatever reason, but I think it could be really cool. So I've been thinking about that, and I hope it comes to life. I think it would be great. Also, Instagram is working on a new option to help creators monetize their reels. Obviously, as creators, we absolutely love new, fresh, easy ways of monetizing. However, when do we stop thinking about monetizing? And, when does this app just turn into an app that's all about monetizing if it hasn't already? So I don't super love this because it feels like Reels is one of the few places where we don't typically have a ton of ads. I mean, I definitely see them in there, but it almost feels like a little bit of a safe space. So this whole kind of new option for monetization would be Reels overlay ads. These ads would essentially appear as banners on your eligible Reels, and you would again kind of like go and toggle this on or off. It's not available for everyone at this point, so don't go looking for it just yet. But essentially, these overlay ads can allow creators to earn money by showing ads on their Reels. I get this from the creator standpoint, more people watching these, you have the ads on there, you're obviously going to be making some income, which is great. I have no idea, no details were released about how much or what the money structure there is going to look like. But also, I'm kind of annoyed at the thought of seeing ads on Reels as a user. I know TikTok doesn't really do this. We see a few ads on TikTok here and there kind of mixed in, or sometimes when you first open the app, but overlay ads, I just can't see people loving this. And I don't know if that will make even more people go from Instagram over to TikTok, but we'll have to see how it plays out. Lastly, Instagram is testing removing the recent tab from the hashtag searches. This is going to piss off a lot of people, I think, especially because there's already so much frustration around hashtags. Every single time we think about hashtags, there's a piece of news that is just different from the last piece of news. So I feel like we're kind of just giving up as a group on hashtags. I personally still use them very frequently. pretty much in every single post unless I forget or something. And I typically see really great views from hashtags because I'm strategically picking good ones. But, like this could be something that changes things. So, in a post by Adam Mosseri, again, he's the head of Instagram, it was announced that Instagram is going to do a small test. That's what they called it, of removing the recent tab from the hashtag search results. So instead, you'll only be able to see that top section where it shows the most popular in the hashtag and the Reels tab. So this is where we'll be able to discover specifically Reels for through hashtags. And I do like this because sometimes when you look for Reels within a hashtag, you have to kind of sort through a lot of things. So I do like that there's a Reels tab. I don't love that they took away the recent one, obviously. I'm going to read a quote from Adam Mosseri. So he basically mentioned that they are, quote, trying to make hashtags as valuable as possible for people. And he also went on to say that Instagram wants to see if this helps people connect with more interesting and relevant content on hashtags while also keeping them across what's current. So it seems like they're just kind of doing an experiment. Again, who knows if this will stick? But all I have to say is if you do hear this and you're still planning on using hashtags and you're not just like super frustrated and you're like, fuck this, I'm done, then what you need to make sure you're doing is using incredibly relevant, low competition hashtags. If there's only top and reels, you can't be using hashtag fashion anymore. Okay, there's a bazillion posts there. You're never going to get to the top of that page. I'm sorry to say it. It's just incredibly rare that that's going to happen. So you need to find hashtags that have low competition that you're able to basically like beat the competition and get to the top section of that hashtag search result even quicker. So low competition, high reach is always the best bet when it comes to hashtag. They're hard to find, but I think low competition is going to be even more key when it comes to removing the Reels tab like they're testing out here. So good luck with all of this Instagram news. If your brain isn't mush yet, it might be at the end of this episode. We are going to be speaking with Sabrina St. Peter, who is going to teach us all about taxes and money management as creators. I know I'm fully aware that this is not the most fun. However, if you don't learn how to do this now, you're going to end up just like I was back a few years ago when I first became a business owner, owed thousands of dollars, and literally was panicking because I did not at the time have thousands of dollars to spend on taxes. So I'm doing you a favor by giving you this now. Please take notes, listen to everything that she has to say. If you have questions, reach out to me, reach out to Sabrina. But without further ado, here we go. We're into the rest of the episode. I have such a treat for you guys today. I know that you have so many questions about this topic, and it's really difficult to find the answers a lot of the time. So we have Sabrina St. Peter here, who is going to give us the tea on taxes and money management for creators. So Sabrina, thank you so much for being here.
Kristen, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this.
Oh, yes. I know that everyone is like sitting with their pen and paper right now, ready to like take so many notes. So I would love to, before we dive into everything, just get like a feel of who you are and how you got into what you currently do.
Yes. So like you said, my name is Sabrina. I have been in customer service, customer success for about 14 years before I went and started my own business. And I started my bookkeeping business because who I was helping before I left the corporate world were small businesses, and I was helping them with their bookkeeping. I worked for a software company, and I just realized that this is just such a need for small businesses. And so I learned everything that there is to know. And I found myself working with a lot of people in the marketing field. So I work with a lot of public relations companies, a lot of event planners, a lot of digital marketers. And the influencer industry, content creation industry is just fascinating to me. It's still new. It's kind of like the Wild West, but it's becoming more and more established.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, there's just a lot of questions out there. And at the end of the day, content creators are small businesses. And that's what's very exciting to me. I love anytime anyone starts a small business, I'm excited for them because they're taking their own future into their own hands.
Exactly. Yeah, it's scary, but it's also just, it's the cool thing to witness.
Exactly. So, like I mentioned, we work with a lot of people in the marketing industry and we help them with their bookkeeping. And that can look like a few different ways. We do done for you services, but we also do DIY services. So, on my personal social media channels, although I'm not the best content creator in the world, we do try to educate people on bookkeeping because not everyone can afford to pay for a bookkeeper every month.
Yeah, exactly. I know for me, I've been self-employed for probably 5 or 6 years now. And throughout my whole time of being self-employed, I didn't totally know what I was doing. I was kind of just like figuring it out as I went. And I feel like so many other creators are in the same boat. My first question for you is really like, how do creators or influencers find the right accountant who actually is going to understand what they do? I know,
Mhm.
like, in my experience, a lot of the accountants that I've reached out to are kind of just like old white guys and like they don't necessarily understand what I do. And so I would really love to hear kind of like what resources you have. Obviously, you're a great option, but for people, looking into different options, how can they find someone who just gets what they do?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So, first thing I will mention is a bookkeeper and an accountant are different.
Hmm.
Bookkeepers are going to be with you throughout the year, every month, figuring out, like, hey, wait, there was this charge to
Yeah.
Walgreens. What did you buy here? And then you can say, oh, that was actually a prop for a photo shoot, whatever.
Right.
An accountant you might only speak with every quarter or maybe just once a year. But
Right.
when you're looking for a professional to work with you, especially if you're a content creator, honestly, I'd start on the social media channels. So I would look for accountants on TikTok. There's two
Yeah.
accountants I follow on TikTok, that actually three, that will talk about creators and the different special things that come along with being a creator, like
Right.
PR boxes and things like that. So I will name one off the top of my head is not the night. I think she's the not spicy accountant,
Okay.
or maybe it's just not spicy accountant.
Okay.
But she has some very great tips. She is a tax accountant, so she's a
Love
professional
it.
who understands, like, hey, this is why this is this way, and she explains it extremely well. Another one I think is just called the small business accountant.
Okay.
And he specifically, I think, works with a lot of people who have Etsy stores, but also he's creating content. So he at least understands
The
what's
world.
the creator fund, for
Yeah.
example, what's a PR box, those sort of things. And I would start there because a lot of times if you're just like, I'm looking for an accountant, someone give me a suggestion,
Yeah.
they might not be who you need.
Exactly. Yeah. I had found my accountant actually through a Facebook group. So I posted in a Facebook group of female entrepreneurs and I was like, this is what I do. I need an accountant who gets this. And I got a lot of different recommendations. So Facebook groups, I think, are a really good tool to utilize as well.
I agree. As long as these people, I would start with the, hey, I'm a content creator and this is like what I'm looking for, rather than saying I need an accountant and then working from there.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. So, when it comes to business expenses, I had asked on my stories what questions people have, and this was by far the most popular question that people had. So, I actually want to give you kind of like a lightning round. Okay, we're going to
Okay.
play a game here. Lightning round of a few things that people were like, is this a business expense or is it not? You can give us your quick answer, but if you need to like explain a little, that's fine too. And then I just want to generally talk about business expenses. So, lightning round, can we count this as a business expense? Yes or no? Explanation if needed. First, hair, nails, facials, beauty services.
I'm going to say no. So I
Okay.
know that might be controversial, but the reason I say no is that if you would not incur the cost for the service, if you were not a content creator, then you can make it a business expense.
Okay.
So if you're never going to get a facial because you're not a content creator, then yes.
Okay.
But the chances are you would get a facial even if you weren't a content creator. Now, if you
Makes
need your
sense.
hair cut or a hair styled a specific way for a specific shoot, or you need, you know, makeup done because it
yeah.
has to be like show up on camera, for example, I would say yes.
Okay. See, it's so hard because like in my experience with my accountant, she's always told me anything that a model would count as a business expense, we kind of do the same thing. So I've been counting my hair, my nails, my facials. I think about like my nails, if I'm holding a product, like I need my nails to like look nice, or you know, my skin in photo shoots. I feel like it's kind of like there's like a blurred line there because I can probably find a way to justify it. Like, yeah, I did need my skin to look really good for this shoot. So it's kind of like a blurred line, isn't it?
I 100% agree. It is a blurred line. And I think that there's just not history, right? When it comes to tax law, and I'm not a lawyer or a tax accountant, but when you're a lawyer, you're looking at, okay, well, what's a precedent? And there just isn't yet. And there's, so I think, like I said before, it's kind of the Wild West, and there's going to be accountants that are super, super, super conservative.
Right.
And are on that side of things. And then there's going to be accountants that are a little bit more liberal. And everyone's different.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the hard part. I think it really differs between like which bookkeeper and which accountant that you find and who you decide to work with. For me, I've just tried to like not go overboard. You know, I'm like I'm not going to get my hair done every single week and count it as a business expense. Like just trying to be reasonable.
Right. And I will say even so I have a client who's a real estate agent. So different than content creator, but you know, her image is important. And so whenever we have questions like that, or bookkeepers in general have questions like that, they'll usually just make a little account that's like, hey, this is for the accountant to look at, right? So they're not forgotten expenses. They're still there. And then the accountant gets to make the decision.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, next in my lightning round, photo shoot props.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes,
so anything
I would
you
say
need to make the photo happen, right?
Exactly. I mean, if you wouldn't buy that normally and you need it for the photo shoot, absolutely.
Okay, amazing. How about clothes that you're going to wear in a shoot, but you're also going to wear outside of a shoot?
I think that's one of those really blurred lines.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you wouldn't normally buy it and you're buying it for the shoot, yes. And then if it happens to get used after the shoot as well, I think that's okay, right? You already own it. But if you are already buying it, like it's for Easter or something, and then you use it in a shoot because you already own it, I would say no.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, for me, what I've kind of been doing with that to like not count everything as a business expense that I buy in terms of clothing is like I'll buy stuff that I'm going to do like a whole haul with, or I'm going to do like a storage try on, or maybe it's something again that I'm like, okay, I have this specific location in mind that I'm going to go do a shoot. And I'll kind of try and plan specific pieces of content for the clothing that I'm going to buy so that if anyone were to ever audit me, I'd be like, well, I bought it for the shoot. You know, like I kind of have receipts. I have proof.
You have pictures.
Yeah.
Picture proof. You have pictures.
Exactly. Okay. How about this one? I guess I have I count some of it as a business expense and some not, because every single time I go to do my bookkeeping, I'm just like, I don't know. So some days I count it and some I don't. How about meals? If you are like chatting about business at the meal.
Oh, if you're chatting about business at the meal, absolutely. So, you know, I do think that sometimes there's people who, what's the word I'm looking for? Blur the line here as well, right?
Yeah, like
they'll put it on their business card and they use like 1 second. They're like, oh yeah, I liked your picture. The end. Here's my corporate card.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're chatting about business, absolutely.
All right. And then how about flights, hotels, transportation, things maybe where it's like not necessarily a content creation trip, but maybe it's you're going to Florida and you were just going for like, why not? And you create a bunch of content while you're there.
You know, I think that's another one of those questions that it's going to depend on your accountant.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those, hey, is the purpose of the trip content, or is content secondary to the trip, right? Is it 50% content or is it 75% content
Right.
sort of thing.
Okay.
So I think that is a question mark. If it was me, that's something I would put in the, hey,
The questionable.
accountant category and
Yeah.
discuss with them when it's time.
Okay, that makes sense. Perfect. So those are all my lightning round questions.
Great.
So what about just, I guess, give us kind of just a general idea of like, what is a business expense? I know we obviously talked about a few of them, but like by definition, what would you say?
Sure. So I think the first thing to understand is business expenses are not always tax deductible.
Right.
So meals, for example, only a portion of, well, it depends what year it is. It changes every single year.
That's so weird.
Or at least it has the last 3 years. I think that's because of COVID. But a business expense isn't always going to reduce your tax liability. But so in general, a business expense is something that you need to run your business. And the rule is always, it needs to be necessary and ordinary. If you're out buying a dog, which I'm all for, that might not be something that's necessary or ordinary for you to create content.
Yeah.
Although that dog might end up in the photos, right? But the business expense is different than what a cost of goods sold might be.
Okay.
And for content creators, you're not necessarily selling product. You might sell a product. It might be something that you have alongside your content creation. But when it comes to just content creation, it's more cost of services. Yes. And that can be kind of discussed of, well, okay, do we want to put props under cost of services or not? But at the end of the day, everything goes on to that bottom line of the profit, or equals to that bottom line.
So when you were saying like some things are tax deductible or not, so basically business expenses, they will help offset the amount of tax that you're going to owe at the end of the year because they were things that you had to pay for in order to make that income. So that makes sense. But I guess my question would be like, why would I count something as a business expense if it's not going to be tax deductible? Like, are there any other benefits, or is it just kind of to keep track?
I would say you want to know what your profit is, right? You want to know how profitable your business is. And one of the examples of something that is quote unquote not tax deductible is business gifts that are above $25. So, and I honestly don't think that's something that really content creators might necessarily run into. Maybe you want to gift your manager something. That would be an example, right? You have management and you want to say thank you at the holidays and you want to buy them, something nice, and you end up buying them something that's $100. Okay. So you are going to be able to write off only $25 of whatever you purchase. Okay. That's the limit. And then the other $75 is still a business expense. Yeah. It just,
that makes sense.
And you'll see it on your balance, or your income statement. Yep. You're going to see that come out of your profit. But when it comes to tax deductions, you're only deducting $25 and your accountant will handle that. But like I said, that's a very niche thing that content creators might not run into as much because you're not necessarily like gifting brands at the end of the year. Unless I'm wrong unless you are. Unless you are.
I actually usually do. So
great.
I usually, so my best friend makes these really cute sugar cookies. So she usually will make me like, Happy New Year sugar cookies. Yeah. And I send a box of cookies out to all the brands that I worked with. So some people totally do. Yeah.
That's great. And I mean, that's awesome.
They love it.
I would also add on that $25, I would have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure that does not include any like engraving or postage. So it's just $25 is like the value. And then everything, like to ship the cookies, it probably costs, decent amount because you want them to arrive in one piece. So that cost is not included in the $25. And yes, I agree. It's kind of random.
There are like so many weird little rules like that. It's just like, again, you have to have a professional helping you with this, or how are you going to know all of this stuff? Like there's too many little things.
Right.
So one thing that I actually ran into a few years ago in my business, and I had our accountant at the time help, but I didn't really understand exactly what he was explaining to me, which happens honestly a lot. So if a creator makes like a big ticket purchase, for example, like I buy a $3,000 camera, isn't there like different ways that you can kind of expense that? Like you can count it all that whole $3,000 that year, or can't you like spread it out through different years? What is that whole process like, and what are, I guess, are the pros and cons?
Yes. So what that comes down to is depreciation. And that's
Yes, that's the
usually
word.
something that the accountants like to deal with themselves, because
Yeah.
each accountant's going to do it differently. So
Okay.
there's, you can take it all in the first year of the ownership, or you
Yep.
can do it a little bit each month for the useful life of the object. Usually
Okay.
this is for big objects, like you said, and I will say most of the time, there are some times where it's not a physical object, but most of the times it's a physical object,
Yeah.
like a camera or a computer. And different businesses have different thresholds, but $2,500 is usually the threshold for that item. And
Okay.
the benefits is depreciation is a tax deduction. So that's why sometimes accountants will take it all in the first year,
Okay.
opposed to making it go throughout the useful
Yeah,
life
different
of
years.
the
Okay.
product. Because at the end of the day, if something's $3,000 and the useful life of it is 10 years, you might only be having like $600 in depreciation in the first
Okay.
year, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. So another question that this was actually like a really big question, and probably one that's going to be a little controversial. I feel like this is something I've heard a ton of mixed different things on. When influencers are getting like PR gifts, or like they're getting gifted things for free from the brands with no expectations of doing anything with it. Like it's not something they're getting to create a specific piece of content with. It's kind of just like, here's some stuff for you to say thanks. So how does that work when it comes to taxes? Do you have to pay taxes on them or not?
So this is something that's very controversial. I will
Yeah.
agree. And I think that the trick here, or the key word, is this expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a precedent, there was a case in which it was basically decided that
Okay.
if you are being given something with no expectations, absolutely no
Yep.
expectations, kind of like you gifting those cookies
Yeah.
to the brands at the end of the year, you have no expectations for them to do anything,
Right.
then that is a gift.
Okay.
That is not taxed, or that is not taxed. That's not income.
Okay.
However, to say that these brands are sending PR boxes with no expectations, I
Yeah.
think is the part that is controversial. Because
Right.
if I'm a brand and I am sending Kristen, $100 worth of my makeup,
Yeah.
I hope that she likes it, and I hope that she puts it on her Instagram stories, right?
Exactly.
And that's where it's tricky. And that's
Okay.
where I would suggest keeping track of your PR boxes, who sent them to you, what's included, and what, the fair market value is, which that's
Okay.
hard itself, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes in the PR boxes, at least my understanding is, it might not always be something that you can like buy in the store.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, a
So
lot of
you
the
might not be able to
times.
go on their website and say like, oh, okay, like this lipstick costs this much money.
Right.
So sometimes you might just have to make your best guess.
Okay.
And I would just keep track of that. I wouldn't put it in your bookkeeping. I'd have like a separate tab in the spreadsheet or something, and then just have it so when tax time comes, your accountant's
Okay.
going to make the decision of what needs to be included as income and not included.
Okay.
But again, it comes back to the expectation. And I think that we would
Yeah.
all be fooling ourselves if brands sending gifts had no expectations.
Very true. Yes,
Right?
that's very true. Maybe they're fooling themselves too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So just to clarify, so again, that if it's a gift with literally no expectations, it technically should not have to be something you're taxed on. But if it is something where like I'm in a contract with a brand and they're like, hey, we're going to send you the product that we want you to feature, is that something we would have to count towards our taxes?
So I see that differently as just getting
Okay.
a PR box and you're not contracted, because
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes companies will reach out to you and just say, hey, I want to send you this box, and you're not contracted with them.
Right.
They're just sending you the box. That situation is more what I would be concerned about taxing as income. Whereas when they're sending you the items to make the videos
content,
with, the content with, I would still track that. But that ultimately is going to end up being a cost of your service, right? So, they send you $500 worth of product. Well, you're using that product to make the video, and then you're turning around and providing this service to them. So that's different than just getting a PR box and not being contracted, at least in my opinion.
Okay. So the way I see this, after you explained all of this, is every influencer should have a spreadsheet that is like PR gifts, PR boxes, or like anything that I've got in the mail, basically. And it would be like, okay, brand name, when they sent it to me, what was included. Then maybe you put like a box of like, was this something I'm obligated to post with or not, so that you can keep track of which ones are and are not. And then maybe you put like the value. Anything else that would need to be in there?
That's really it. I would honestly just keep it as simple as possible, because you want it to be something that you'll actually use and do. And if you make it complicated, you might not, right? Exactly. So keep it super simple. And maybe it's, if you open the package and before you open the next package, you write it down.
Go right over. Okay. That makes sense. I think that's a good habit to get into. Now, I know that it's April already. For anyone who's listening to this and is like, okay, I have to start doing this, do you think they need to backtrack, or like, do we just kind of start from today and call it a year starting from April?
You know what? I think done is better than perfect, right? We would all love to be able to backtrack and go to January 1, but I'd rather you start today and actually do it, rather than being overwhelmed, being like, oh, it's 3.5 months into the year and I got all this stuff already and I don't know where to start. Just start. And if you have time, or if you think of something, add it in.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. Okay. Perfect. So when deciding on rates as an influencer, how much should they basically be adding on to what they want to pocket for things like expenses and taxes? So like, for example, if I wanted to create a video for a brand and take home $500, how much extra should I be padding onto that rate to present to the brand, so that when it comes to taxes, like I'm still able to kind of like pocket that $500?
So this is a little bit of a complicated answer, because there's a lot of different ways of going about this. If I had to say one sentence on this, I'd say add 30% for taxes.
Okay.
Now, if you live in Oklahoma or Florida, that might be too much. If you live in New York City, that might be too little, right?
Okay.
And the reason being is, for example, Florida is a state that does not have income tax. So
crazy.
That's not a tax that you have to worry about paying when you're in Florida.
Yeah.
New York does. Illinois, where I live, does. Michigan does. So that's something to take into consideration. Also, if you have local income tax that you have to pay, that's another thing to take into consideration. The other side of this coin is you are taxed on essentially the profit of your business. Now, that's assuming everything's tax deductible that you have under business expenses and things like that. So a creator who's just starting out might have less expenses than a creator who has been more established. There are creators out there that I see, they have office spaces. That costs more money, right? So if you are more established, my suggestion is to take what you paid in taxes the last time you paid taxes. So you paid taxes yesterday, take whatever you paid, and then divide it by your top line revenue. And that's going to give you the percentage that you pay in taxes. Now, will that change year to year? Probably. But will it give you a good idea of what you should be setting aside and what you should be padding your take-home money with? Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. So with like state, how it differs from state to state, where can a creator go to figure out, like, does my state have income tax? What is that percentage? Like, is there a place to find the typical percentages that you can expect to pay?
Yes. And so Google obviously is helpful, but
Yeah.
I find NerdWallet has really great
Okay.
articles on this. So if you look up like state income tax NerdWallet, they'll have one article that has all the states
Awesome.
listed. One thing to keep in mind is some states have no income tax. Some states have just one income tax, and some states have marginal income tax, just like the federal income tax.
Okay.
So that's something to keep in mind as well. So, for example, if a state has marginal income tax, what it might look like is the first $100,000 is taxed at 4%, and then everything after $100,000 is taxed at 5%. And those are just numbers I made up in my head. But just keep in mind, if you make $200,000, that whole $200,000 is not taxed at that higher tax bracket. It's just the difference between the $100,000 and the $200,000.
Okay, and that's marginal tax, income tax, and you said it's some
Correct.
states have it and some don't.
Some states have it, some don't, but our federal income tax is a marginal income tax. So, for example, if you look up federal income tax, there's, I think, like 6 or 7 tax brackets, and even if you are in the highest tax bracket, you're not paying that percentage on every dollar, only on that range of
what's
money.
In that threshold. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, that makes sense. I did not know that, so that's very helpful. Yeah, that actually brings me to another one of the questions that I had, kind of jumping all over the place here, but it goes along with that. When I just was talking with my accountant, so I've been a sole proprietor for years, and I was just talking with my accountant a few weeks ago, and he was like, you need to register as an LLC ASAP, because he said next year, based on what you made this year, you're going to save a lot of money if you become an LLC. So I guess this brings me to the question of, like, when it comes to sole proprietors, LLCs, S Corps, all of these different things, at what point should a creator maybe go from being a sole proprietor to an LLC? Like, is there basically like a certain number they should be making when they say this might be more worth it, or does that kind of differ from state to state as well?
I think it differs from state to state, and your accountant or a business lawyer is going to be the best person to guide you on this. Personally, I'm all for registering as an LLC as soon as you can. And the reason for that is LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. Now, as a content creator, do you really have much liability? Probably not. No. But as a bookkeeper myself, people's accounting and bookkeeping is really important. That's a lot of pressure. Right? And if, God forbid, something happened and someone was coming after me, I want my business to be separate than me. Right. And that's the nice thing about being an LLC. The liability then falls on my business. Now, that is an overgeneralization. I am sure there are situations when different things have happened. At different points, but and then when it comes to an S Corp, that's where I hear there's usually a lot of tax savings in. Okay. Now, the thing about S Corps, and again, this is where being a content creator and in kind of this new industry might leave a lot of question marks. But S Corps are required to pay their CEO, owner, whoever, reasonable compensation. So the question is, well, then what is reasonable compensation? Because if you're an S Corp and you're running your business by yourself, you're doing the admin, you're doing the content creation, you're doing the modeling, you're doing the editing, you're doing it all, right? Literally so then is reasonable compensation however much you would pay each of those individual people, or what is the IRS going to see as reasonable? And that's the big question.
Okay. It's crazy that there's so much flexibility for things like that. Like, why don't they just make a number and they say, like, here you go. Wouldn't it make it a lot easier? Or do they just love to be able to audit people? I think that might be what it comes down to. Oh my goodness. Okay, so that makes sense. So someone had actually asked, at what point as a creator do I need to start worrying about paying taxes?
yesterday.
Immediately.
Yes, immediately. So
yeah.
so if you are, there's so many things I could say about this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are taking a loss on your business, you're not going to be owing taxes on your business.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean you're not owing taxes personally, right? Because if you are a disregarded entity, which is what you are if you're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, you pay your taxes as yourself. So I, for example, am paying taxes as Sabrina for my business because it all flows through me. However, keep track of everything. You want to keep track of everything because you want to get all those deductions. And if you're not keeping track of anything, you're going to forget items. Even clients I have right now, I will say, hey, I don't see my charge and you pay me every month. Like, where is that? What bank account is that coming? Oh, that's coming out of my personal bank account. I'm like, well, that's a tax deduction. Like, that's not on your books right now. Right.
Yeah.
So you want to keep track of everything, but also, God forbid, if someone comes to you and say, oh, well, you started doing content creation in 2015, but you didn't pay taxes until 2019. Why is that? You want those records. Right? You want those records to be like, oh, well, it was just a hobby then. And then the IRS actually has rules about what is a hobby versus what is not a hobby. And essentially it's if you intend to make money or not.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
If you intend to make money, it's not a hobby. If you did not intend to make money, it is a hobby.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I know for me, when I first got started as a creator, I didn't really know, like, I wanted to make money, of course, but I didn't really know, like, how much money I would be making. And so I registered myself as a sole proprietor, and I just started taking 30% of everything I was making. At the time, I lived in Massachusetts. And that worked out totally fine for me. I took 30% of all of my checks that I was getting in, direct deposits, whatever, put it right into savings. And then when it came tax time, I was really, really happy. But because I already had this money saved up. But the thing was, when I first started as a small business, I was a photographer, and no one told me about taxes, okay? Like, I was like 18, I don't know, maybe 17, 16 at the time. No one told me about taxes. And so I just kept making money, and it was getting deposited into my account. Never saved a cent because, like, again, no one told me I needed to. And so I'm on TurboTax when I'm come February. And I was just like, oh my God, why are they trying to ask me for like $5,000 right now? Like, again, I'm 18. I'm like, I don't have $5,000 right now. And that was kind of like my slap in the face moment, where ever since then, I was just like, I will never miss another business expense. I will always pay my quarterly taxes, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yes.
And I will, make sure that I'm doing my taxes correctly and actually saving money up, because when you get that bill from the IRS.
Exactly. Yeah. And here's the thing. It can be scary, and just something to note. I don't know if everyone knows this. The IRS will work with you. Even if you don't have the chunk of change to pay right then and there, you can set up payment plans. And I think the payment plans can be like over 3 years or something like that.
That's really good.
They will work with you. Obviously, like, I would highly suggest having a savings account that you put your tax money in, because then, you have a big savings account, you take the tax money out, and hopefully there's some left over, and it's a little bonus for you at the end of the year, right?
Exactly.
But if the paying is what is scaring you from doing your taxes, please don't let that be what's stopping you, because there are payment plans available.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I feel like when you don't pay them, it could be worse in the long run. Again, when they're like, just kidding, from the last 5 years, you lost $20,000. Then you're like,
yep, there's penalties.
Definitely don't have that.
There are penalties. Exactly.
Yep,
Exactly.
Yeah. So definitely a good point to just start saving. Look on NerdWallet, figure out an estimate of what you feel like you would have to put away, and just open, yourself a savings account, put that money in there and just pretend it does not belong to you. Like, I never, ever, ever touch my savings. I pretend it doesn't exist.
Exactly. And, the best way to think of it is just like you said, this money doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the government.
Yeah. Ugh, the government.
Unfortunately.
Don't get me started. Okay, another question that we got, is it true? So this is, I guess, something kind of like for independent contractors, which is what all of us influencers are going to be. Whenever we are working with a brand, we're always on an independent contractor contract where we are not an employee of the company. So we are getting, our W-9s, I think, what is it? W-9s and 1099s?
Yep, you get 1099 and you send them a W-9. Yep.
Okay, yes. So is it true that you only have to file and count it as income if it's over the $600? Like, what is this madness with the $600 threshold here?
So to answer your question, no, that's not true. Any income that you bring in as your business should be tracked as income.
Yeah.
Even if a brand pays you $100, that should be tracked as income. The $600 threshold is just the threshold that they have to report.
Okay.
So if you work with a brand, say you work with a brand one time, they pay you $1,000. They have to submit a 1099 on your behalf.
Okay.
If you are, depending on what type of business you are, S Corps and S Corps, C Corps do not have 1099 submitted for them.
Okay.
And that is why you send them your W-9, because the W-9 shows them what type of business you are.
Okay, that
makes sense.
And it
also has your address on it and your social security number or your EIN, and that's how everything gets matched up at the IRS. Okay. Now, if you work for a brand 4 times during the year and they pay you $200 each, that is still over the $600 threshold. So they will still submit a 1099 for you. No matter how much someone pays you, though, track that as income because it is income. The government will, I'm sure they'll find out somehow. They'll find out.
They are watching. They will find you. They know where you live.
Right.
So basically, to kind of clarify there, if I were someone working with a brand and I only made $200 with them for the entire year, it doesn't change anything for me. It really only changes things for the brand.
Right. They just wouldn't have to submit a 1099. Exactly.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So another question we had was about quarterly estimated taxes. Again, for me, when I got slapped in the face with all this money that I owed, they were like, you didn't pay quarterly taxes? And I was like, what's a quarterly tax? So I think a lot of people who are just starting out don't even know. People are used to being on W-2s. They're used to being an employee, not used to being self-employed. So they don't even know what quarterly taxes are, because when you're an employee, you really don't have to worry about that. So give us an idea of what estimated quarterly taxes are, and is it mandatory? What happens if you don't pay them? Give us kind of that info there.
So unfortunately, it is mandatory. I will say, if I remember correctly, the government kind of gives you a pass in your first year of business on estimated quarterly taxes, because you really
how are you supposed to estimate?
Yeah, how are you supposed to estimate? Yeah. And then so basically estimated quarterly taxes is you paying what you think you owe for that quarter. And I will say the due dates are weird. They're not always at the end of a quarter. Some of the quarters are 2 months. Every time I look at it, I'm like, why is it like this?
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But I'm sure it makes sense to the government. So basically you can log on to, I think it's EFTPS. I always get the order of the website wrong, and you just submit your estimated taxes for that quarter, and then that money is applied to your tax bill for the entire year. So whatever was paid yesterday, or whenever people paid their 2021 taxes, was just what was left over for the year. It wasn't on top of what was already paid. Well, I should say it was on top of what was already paid, but basically what you're paying is being applied to your tax bill.
You pay it at different times.
Exactly. And unfortunately, if it isn't paid, if you don't do quarterly taxes, there is a penalty. I am not sure off the top of my head what that pays, because I like my clients not to have to pay that.
I mean, that works too.
But that's just like if you don't pay your taxes, there's a penalty. Just it's the same way. It's the same way.
Okay. That makes sense. I'll give an example. I'm always super transparent about money. So when I estimated my taxes for last year, I paid $2,000 in each quarter, but I ended up making more than I thought I was going to. So I ended up having to pay. So I had $8,000 paid in after all my expenses and all deductions and everything. I ended up having to pay another 10,000 in federal and another 4,000 in state. And so it was another $14,000 that I didn't expect to pay on top of the 8 that I had already paid in. So that really sucked. So honestly, I feel like if anything, you should even overestimate. Like if you are a business right now who's in the starting phases and you're going to hopefully be making more money every month, like think higher than maybe you think, because it sucks to get hit with a $14,000 bill at one time. And again, you can split this up, but also I don't want to have to worry about it because then I still have to pay my quarterly taxes for this year and then I'm just every month paying the government.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? It does suck to pay taxes. I mean, I think we can all agree that. But what I always like to tell business owners is if you're paying taxes, that means you're making money. That means you're successful.
Exactly.
And I know that doesn't really make it feel that much better. But but it just like think about it that way and pat yourself on the back.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good mindset to have because you can't avoid it. So you might as well look at it in a positive light. I will say after talking with my accountant, so he said, okay, you're getting married this year. That's going to change how you're going to be taxed and everything. And, you're going to be an LLC. So I did this year register as an LLC versus a sole proprietor. So he said there's a few different ways there that I'll be saving. So even if I'm making a little bit more money, I told him what I thought I'd be making for this whole year. And he said I'd probably still owe around what I owed this year. So now we've been doing, I think it's like $6,500 of quarterly estimated taxes. So it sucks again to have to pay it throughout the year, but I'm going to be so much happier next year come tax time because I won't, hopefully. I mean, I guess maybe hopefully I do get hit with a big tax number because that means I made more money, but
but you'll be prepared.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I'll be more prepared.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so that's estimated taxes. So I was also going to ask about this because this is something I'm being selfish here. This is a question I personally had that I'm always curious to hear what people have to say back. So Andrew and I, we own a house now, and when we first bought this house, Andrew had a full-time job, so we pretty much just used his income to apply for our loan and everything. Now the issue is Andrew is also self-employed, so we're two self-employed people. It's very difficult when you're self-employed, I feel like, to get a house loan or a car loan because how do you know how much you're going to be making every month? Some months I make $20,000, some month I make $700. So like it's difficult for a big company to be like, we'll give you a loan because we can count on you paying it when there's a lot of uncertainty there. So when it comes to making big purchases like a house or again the car or whatever where you need a loan, what's the best advice you can give creators for tracking their income and expenses? Like, should we be like not tracking as many expenses because you want to look like you're making more, or like how does that work?
So what this all comes down to is bookkeeping and taxes, right?
Yes.
This kind of almost goes back to what we were just saying. Like when you pay taxes, it means you're successful, right?
Yeah.
They want to see, and I'm not a loan officer. I've never been a loan officer, but the loan officers I have spoken with, they want to see that you have made money in the past. And I think usually they want like 2 years of income taxes income statements.
Yes.
And then they also want to see, oh yes, and this is what you've submitted to the government and you've paid the government that. Mm-hmm. So paying taxes is a good thing. I would not suggest, not putting your business expenses on there just because those are deductions as well.
Yeah, that can get
just
messy.
Don't try to mess with that. just put all your business expenses on there as normal. Obviously, you want to make as much money as you possibly can. Who doesn't, right? But track
Yes.
everything and keep track of everything. I also, when you are doing these big purchases, if you have an option, for example, a mortgage, there are a bajillion mortgage brokers out there. Find one that works with small businesses or works with self-employed people. They're going to have other options. And they're going to be used to working with self-employed people. So they're not going to be annoyed by, the other hurdles that they might have to jump through.
Yeah, exactly. I know when we were first sitting down to figure it out, our loan officer was like, we're just going to use his income because I don't even want to look at yours. I was like, It's a hot mess. What do you want from me? So obviously when it comes to organizing expenses and everything, if a creator can afford a bookkeeper, I think that's the best option. Do you have any other, I guess for people who are just starting out and aren't ready to invest in a bookkeeper, do you have any other options that you would recommend for them?
Yes. So I would say 3 things I would recommend, and it depends on your technical ability or technical drive, I should say, because just because you have the ability doesn't mean you want to do it. Excel or Google Sheets, just keeping track of everything. We have a Google Smart template, which will be on the landing page that I will share with you.
Yes, I'll have it in the description.
Awesome. But honestly, keep it simple. If you know yourself and Google Sheets is the way you got to go, Google Sheets is the way you got to go. Wingspan, which I know you're a fan of.
I was just going to say Wingspan.
Yeah, so Wingspan is a technology that brings in your bank feed and helps you do your bookkeeping right in there. It also helps you invoice, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it does. Yep, you can invoice through there.
It helps you do invoicing too, so that's nice. Yep. And then I'm a bookkeeper. I love QuickBooks. I think that QuickBooks it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world for someone who is not super technical, maybe, to use, but your accountant, it's going to be very versatile. Your accountant's going to love it. You're going to be able to make rules. So, for example, Canva, right? I'm sure everyone listening probably has used Canva or has a Canva subscription. You can say, hey, anytime I have a charge from Canva, this is going to go under advertising and marketing, or you can put it on software, whatever you decide. You can do rules like that to speed up your bookkeeping. However, I think you can also do rules like that in Wingspan as well. So take a look, and honestly, the best system is going to be the system you're going to use. So if I remember correctly, I think Wingspan's free.
It's free.
Because I think they make money off.
Yep.
Oh, okay. It used to be $20 a month.
They just changed it.
It's free now.
Yeah, it's free
now. That's awesome.
Amazing.
So, and then QuickBooks, if you do go the QuickBooks route, I do not recommend doing self-employed. The way that it's set up is self-employed kind of lives on this little island over here, and everything else lives together. So if you ever need to upgrade, you can't upgrade from self-employed to everything else. So
why do they do that?
I don't know.
Just fix it.
I mean, essentially self-employed is built for independent contractors, but it doesn't have things that are necessary. So the simple start works very well. So if you do the QuickBooks route, do that. Wingspan, like we mentioned, is free. And then Google Sheets obviously is free. If you want a smart template, you can purchase that. And usually that's just a one-time cost. So we have ours, which is the Easy Small Business Finance Tracker, which, like you said, the link will be in the description. But whatever works for you is what's important. The best thing to use is what you're going to actually use.
Yes, agreed. So this was amazing. I know you did say that you have a little bit of an offer for everyone. I would love to kind of dive into that quick.
Yes. So like I said, we have the Easy Small Business Finance Tracker, which is a Google Sheet template. It is automated in a way where basically you just copy and paste from an Excel download from your bank into the smart sheet. And then you just have to categorize everything, and it spits out an income statement for you.
Awesome.
You also can put your goals in there and things like that. So we're going to give your listeners a code, which is going to be SCOOP, SCOOP, and it'll be 30% off. And so that should bring it to around $27 for people.
$27, and it's a business expense, guys.
It's a business expense. It's one time charge. And then that also gives you access to, we have a bunch of videos walking through how to use it. We also have lifetime updates. So if we ever make updates to it. So one of the things I did not mention that's in there is we have suggested estimated tax savings based on what it's showing in your profit. So it's basically showing this is how much your tax bank account should have in it right now. So we're going to update it every year because the tax brackets change every year. And so we're going to update that for 2023. So you'll get access to all of that once the updates happen as well.
Yay. And I mean, it's nice because these things, like, you could make your own Excel sheet and it might take you 5 hours, or you could literally spend $27 on one and do it in 7 minutes.
Exactly.
It's worth it. Your time is precious.
We have all the videos to walk you through it. We also will do live. We have like live workshops. People can sign up for it too if they want to do that. But yeah, we're happy to help whoever we can.
I love it. Thank you so much. This was great. I have all of your links and everything to your social media platforms, to your offer and everything in the description here for anyone who wants to go check you out. I really appreciate you helping us. I know that everyone, again, probably has a notepad full of things that they needed to have answered. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure everyone listening does too.
Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful for everyone. I really appreciate it.